Welcome to A Perfect Touch. I'm Jeanette. My first dip into the Regency era, and most definitely out of my comfort zone, was for the September 2015 Historical Sew Monthly Challenge called Out of Your Comfort Zone. To help me with the uneasiness of appropriate undergarments and accessories for the era, I acquired the La Mode Bagatelle Regency wardrobe pattern, which included most everything I would need to feel comfortable creating this historical period fashion. I made the bodiced petticoat, a trained gown, and a chemisette. I wore this gown once at costume college, later made a spencer and a reticule from the same pattern, and everything has been stored since, as I haven't had a chance to participate in any Regency events. The novel coronavirus brought many changes and challenges to our lives, and at the same time brought opportunities through internet events. One of those events was to be in November, my birthday month, and it was being hosted by the Regency Society of Virginia. I am a member just to learn from their events that they bring to their members. The November event was a presentation on the history of silhouette art, and Charles Burns, a silhouette artist from the UK, would be in attendance to create our silhouette. It was a perfect excuse for me to add to my very slight Regency wardrobe, use the last bit of a red silk, and attend an event that was just 1 week before my birthday. I had purchased a hat pattern from a costumer's D-stash and found that the pattern designer had an overdress pattern for the same period, and I purchased that as well. I had just enough of the red silk for the overdress and hat, and a small amount of gold silk for the lining. I didn't know anything about the fashions of the Regency era when I first sewed for this period in 2015, and 5 years later my knowledge was no better. I rely on portraits and costumers much more knowledgeable than me to guide me. In this case, I also depended upon the pattern designer. I did, however, decide without any factual support to add gold piping to the bodice edges of the gown and to the trim that I would add to the hat. Is piping historically accurate or historically acceptable for this period? I still don't have evidence, but it will bring a smile to me just adding that pop of color, and I decide that is most important for my birthday gown. I begin by cutting fabric strips from my gold silk at a 45-degree angle to the selvage edge, which is the bias of the fabric. There is a stretch in the bias which allows the piping to follow curves beautifully. The width of each strip is double the seam allowance of 1/2 inch, plus the circumference of my 1/8 inch cord, which in this case is 3/8 inches, for a total width of 1 3/8 inch. I cut the rest of the pattern pieces, and my fabric and bias strips are cut and ready for assembly. The cord is sewn into the center of the bias strip using the zipper foot. Then I pin the bias with cord to the edges of the fabric pieces, and here I'm just doing a trial to make sure that I like the pop of color. And I do. Because I've cut the bias strips, allowing for the seam allowance, I can pin the strip even with the edge of the fabric piece. The bias strip is sewn to the fabric using the zipper foot, and then the adjoining piece is pinned over the bias strip. I do this in 2 steps to be sure I follow the cord closely. This is the finished back and side backs with the gold piping. I really do love that bit of color. I add the bias to create piping along all edges of the bodice. The lining is cut from the same gold silk as the bias strips and sewn. The lining is sewn to the outside front edges of the bodice, leaving the lower edge and the belt front edge open. The lined bodice is turned and pressed, and the lining armholes hand-stitched to the bodice armholes. The lined bodice is now ready for the skirt and the buckle flaps. The skirt is an easy assembly with long interior seams, which I machine sew, and hemmed front and lower edges, which would be visible, and I hem by hand. Then the upper edge of the skirt is pleated according to the pattern instructions to match the lower edge of the bodice. I machine sew the skirt to the outer bodice layer and hand stitch the bodice lining to enclose the skirt at bodice seam. The belts are added at the front edges, and the skirt and bodice are aligned and hand stitched together. And the overdress is finished. Completed bodice and skirt, interior and exterior. I found the most beautiful buckle from Ensembles of the Past on Etsy, and with my gold accents, I think this will be perfect for the completed overdress. The overdress completely changes the look of the white gown, and without the chemisette will make a beautiful evening gown. I have a pattern for an evening turban, also by Wingio, and if I ever have the opportunity to wear an evening ensemble, I will create a matching turban with the few scraps of red silk I have left. There may be enough for a petal reticule from the pattern from out of a portrait. Here is a little peek at the next part of this project, the gathered day hat. It will be a separate post and video, as I want to share all the steps I used, including the buckram base and the curled feathers. Thank you for being here. I look forward to sharing the next part of this project, including the party for which it was all created. Until then,